I hate the word because I thought that the word was a thing that I had to arrive at, a place I had to get to. In my mind, the word art is 300 feet tall, 250 feet wide, and is enhanced and decorated by the souls of Chaim Soutine, Egon Schiele, and Anselm Kiefer, even though he's still alive, and Baryshnikov and Nureyev hold the sides, and Zimborska is the one who has described it. For me, art is something that is the pinnacle of everything that I want my life to be about. And I thought I had to bloody get there. So I wasted years doing this. Years and years and years. Especially because that exquisite monolith is guarded by gallery owners and curators who have razor-sharp teeth and steely-eyed and are defending this citadel that I should have access to. But I was always too young, or too old, or too male, or too English, or too Australian, or too classical, or too avant-garde. I never fitted in. And along the way, had my share of trauma with racism and getting beaten by nuns because I was a Catholic primary school, and I was a heathen because I was a boy and I wasn't a Catholic, like the whole bit. You name it, I had it. So, where this begins for me is I get into VCA. It's the final year of VCA, mid-80s, and I'm 19, and a guy called Ron Walker, who was the treasurer of the Liberal Party, and he was Mr. Commonwealth Games, and he brought the Formula One to Melbourne. He was also the chairman of a company called Hudson Conway, industrial building people. And he said to me that he would give me, he started buying my work. And he said he would give me the foyer of every building that Hudson Conway built in Melbourne and Sydney, and I would make a bucket of money, and I would be famous. And all I had to do, every week he would send me a cutting from Business Review Weekly. And all I had to do was copy the image that he sent me. I was outraged. I was incensed. I was an artist and I wasn't going to do this crap. So I turned it down. He said, "You don't want to copy it? Just change it a little." No way. I couldn't do that. I couldn't rip off other people. And I couldn't do the other. I didn't have the social skills or the understanding of what was needed to break into the Melbourne art scene. And I wasn't good enough to be Lucian Freud. And that kind of level was the minimum in my mind and in my heart that I had to hit. I'm using painting as an example, but writing, I'm a writer as well, writing is the same thing. If it wasn't Borges or if it wasn't Kurt Vonnegut, I wasn't good enough. So I spent years chasing it. And one day I too learned an important lesson. I'd been working on a portrait of Margaret Carnegie, one of the first people to collect, one of the first white people to collect Aboriginal imagery. And I was working on her portrait. I'd done a big Aboriginal art project with her decades earlier. And I worked on her portrait for about a year, 18 months. And I really worked it. And I was very happy with it. It was a good looking piece. I was pretty proud. And I walked into the studio one day and saw, as I looked at the canvas, that the head and the neck were about 2 inches too far that way. Devastated. It was wrong. I had it. She was all awkward and boyishly, but the head was no. And having realised it was wrong, I had two choices. One was pretend I hadn't seen it. The other was, oh shit. 3 days I wrestled with the oh shit. Eventually one day I went in there with a palette knife and sandpaper, terrified because I'd done his face. The face was great, it's just the angle was wrong. And I knew I couldn't redo it. I can't repeat stuff because that for me is the road to this is the contentious bit, craft. Now I love craft. My mother knits jumpers that are exquisite, they are beautiful, but she can do it with her eyes closed. There's a repetition there, and for me repetition means it's not evolving. There was a group of women who took crochet, and they crocheted this tea cozy and hung it over a tank and made a big long penis cover over the turret gun bit and hung a pom-pom off the end and turned the tank into this fabulous farcical thing using crochet. Now for me, that elevated crochet to an art form because it had reinvented the world, and that's what I love. I love things being shown new. So, for me, when we give something a name, here we go. So, I go in, and I'm terrified I can't reproduce the face. I sand it back, I scrape it off, I work it. I was right, I didn't reproduce it, I made it better. That was my learning starting point. Because I realised then why I hate the word art. To call anything art is to call what children do when they're at primary school learning to write, learning to craft those letters. To call anything art is to call what they are doing literature. This thing that I've done, this drawing, that ain't art. And what they're doing, they're writing, that ain't literature. That word is going to kill us. Stick with me. As soon as we give something a name like that, it can't evolve because it's been framed, it's been constricted. We have to keep it loose. As other people here have said tonight, we have to keep it evolving. Like a dentist or a lawyer or a muso, they have a practice, a dental practice, a legal practice, because theoretically they keep learning. The same applies to drawing, painting, sculpture. As soon as the evolutionary part of it stops, as soon as it gets mired in sameness, creativity is frozen. It sets things on a pedestal of done. Miss, sir, I finished. Here's my work, I've done my art. Look, here's my art. No. Done is the opposite of flowing, growing. You are not done, my darling child. You have hardly started. So, I tear up my work. I tear up my students' work. Horror. And they, when they are over their initial horror, they tear it up too. And they do it with abandon and delight and thrill, because sometimes they collage it and work back into it. Sometimes they turn it upside down. Sometimes they go, you know what? Like Kurt Vonnegut said. Kurt Vonnegut supports me in this. He said, go home, students. Write a poem, make it work, really put some time and effort into it, then tear it up and put it into bins, and don't tell your mum or your dad or your boyfriend or your girlfriend or your teacher that you did it. The doing is the lesson. The doing is the lesson. In Japan, I saw people sweeping the streets, and I understood the soul of sweeping for the first time. The pleasure, the practice of it. In China, I saw children practicing with mops, wet mops, on the sidewalk, under the guidance of old men and old women, engaging physically with the shape and form of their language, like exquisite ice skaters and martial artists. And I compare this, as did Alan Watts, to a street sweeper who is bored, who is just sweeping the street. And in that, I got the role of art, and that art is not a noun. Art is not an object. Art is a verb. Art is a doing thing. It is a state of mind. It is not a destination. It is a way of living. It cannot be bought. This jacket, which I love, was made by my wife. Nice one, Jane. She made me tear up my speech that I had this morning when I woke up with. This one was written this morning, because this is more about the engagement aspect of things rather than a lecture, which I'm really good at throwing at people. So, my assertion this evening is that it's an intention to always explore, to expand, to enliven. I'm okay with the words, I'm an art practitioner, with that idea. I turn up again and again in the studio, at the desk, and grapple with the void, see what emerges, what I can learn about myself, what I have to tear up inside myself, how to let go of what my ego is attached to, what ideas need to be supplanted and enlarged. For me, that's what art's about. It's about looking in the mirror and questioning what today needs to be changed, what needs to evolve, what needs to grow. Jean Cocteau said, mirrors are doors for death to come and go. See yourself in the mirror each day and watch death at work. Wow! What a line! I do that. I look in the mirror, I go, who the hell are you? Like, where did this come from? Inside, I'm still, 18, 23, 12, 4, 32, but I'm not this old, whatever this is. But I'm engaging with it. So what I want you to do is I want you to go home. And I want you to rip something up. And I want you to do it again. To start and do the same thing and do it differently.